Hey, before we get started into today's episode, I have one big, exciting announcement and the other just kind of a PSA. So first, the PSA is that I'm still trying to figure out what's best to use for when I interview people. And sometimes they can't hear me, so I have to unplug like my mic or my headphones. And long story short, today's episode, just a warning that on my end, it might sound not as good as normal and maybe a bit louder than when Athina speaks. So just wanted to put a little PSA on that. Second, the exciting announcement is that I have now launched a page on Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/flowwiththegrow. And there you'll find my Patreon page. It's sort of like a membership, and you'll find 3 different membership options. In the future, I hope to open up more tiers and more content, more bonus content. So essentially, this is a membership where bonus content will be added, and each tier has its own bonus content. And just because this is new, I'm going to quickly go through the 3 tier options. So you can either fast forward through this part or stay and listen to hear the options, or just go and check out patreon.com/flowwiththegrow. So first tier, I call it Lover and Supporter, and this is $1 a month. So for $1 a month, you're going to get bonus episodes, and this is going to include my mini-sodes. And this is all moving forward from this point on, nothing previous. So my previous mini-sodes will stay. You're going to get access to an exclusive online community where after you start this membership, you'll be sent to a thank you page, and that link should be in there. And it's actually a Facebook group. And then, of course, my unlimited amounts of gratitude. The second tier, I call it More Please. So this is $5 a month. You're going to get everything I just mentioned in tier 2. Plus, you're going to have access to video episodes and the opportunity to choose a future episode topic. And tier 3, I call it Extra Love and Support. So in addition to everything in the previous 2 tiers, this option is for those people who want to show some extra love and support as I continue to make content creation a bigger part of my life, and for you, the supporter and listener. And this will also allow me to grow my Patreon content, and it helps me financially to continue creating and working towards my vision and in this new small business entrepreneurial world. So if you feel led to contribute to this option, seriously, thank you. It truly means the world to me. And just to be transparent here, like complete honesty, Flow with the Grow has since day one been something that I have invested my own time and my own money to produce this show and to keep it going. There's monthly investments to keep it going, and the time that it takes, including note-taking, recording, editing, publishing, also the investment of the equipment and editing software and hosting account. While I love the process and the growth, and I've loved just diving in and doing it and taking that control, I want to do and create so much more. So with all of the work and investing money each month, the first goal I have is to monetize Flow with the Grow and fully fund the money I invest each month. So at first, just to break even, that's my goal. My next goal, of course, is to monetize enough to produce a full part-time and even full-time income. So your donation, whether it's $1, $5, $10, any amount, will help me financially, and it'll help me to continue producing the show. And it'll help me to create even more, to bring you bonus content and connection, and even outside of the podcast. So I hope that with your support, with your financial support, I can not only provide you back with bonus content that is valuable and helpful in some way, shape, or form, but also just know that your donation does mean a lot to me because you are a supporter and listener, but also it really does help me financially. So that's that. That is, again, Patreon. So it's patreon.com/flowwiththegrow. All right, that's that. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Flow with the Grow. I'm your host, Sophia, a health and fitness professional, positivity distributor, and a real-life human being with real-life challenges. Every Tuesday, you will hear my honest conversations on the day-to-day highs and lows that life teaches us, as well as bring you actionable tips that you can implement to improve your health and wellness journey. This podcast will empower you to flow with the inevitable setbacks of life. You will learn what it means to flow with the grow, see through a lens of optimism, and navigate your way to living your best life. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Now let's jump into your daily dose of positivity and growth.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, so first I would love if you just kind of gave everyone a rundown of like who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Athena. I'm currently a podcaster and a writer. So that is predominantly what I do. I also do a bit of social media management as well, sort of on the side. But predominantly I'm a podcaster and a writer. My podcast is called Finding My Fit, and it covers so many different things, mainly health, nutrition, mindset. Those are sort of the main topics of my podcast. And I guess that's pretty much where I'm at. It's predominantly my podcast that I sort of promote on my social medias, and that's, I guess, how we met through social media. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So have you been doing this for a couple of years now, or when did you kind of start getting into podcasting and social media and all that?
Yeah, I mean, my podcast I've had for about a year and a half. So I started that last May. And my social media, I've honestly been posting on social media for so long. Like, I think I actually made like a fitness Instagram account before that was a thing. Like I made one, when was it? It must have been about 6 or 7 years ago now. And it was just before like fitness influencers kind of became a thing. So I've been posting on Instagram literally for 6 or 7 years now, but I don't necessarily use that Instagram account that much anymore. I actually use my podcast Instagram account a lot more because I just prefer that. I don't really use my other one that much. And I've had that account for about a year and a half. Like, I started that just really to promote my podcast, and it's kind of grown into like a little community on there. Like, I feel like there's a really good podcasting community, and it's so nice to connect with other people like you through Instagram.
Yeah, I love that. That's really the power. Like, just there's a huge power in social media. I know there's a lot of negative things in social media, but I see it as it's like an opportunity to meet and connect with people, like, you know, with like us. So that's awesome. And I noticed too, like through the stuff that you share, even though like I relate to it and it's things that like I love to share, I kind of like, there's also this feeling of a community like within your Instagram too. And the things that you share is just so, I think people need to, you know, read those or listen to your podcast or just need more tips like that. And you share some really good stuff. So, so yeah. Okay. So also when I was thinking about a topic for today, I was like, there's so many avenues that we could go. Like, we could go fitness and food and nutrition, like mindset, everything. But in this time that we have, I wanted it to be focused, and I like to talk about so many things. So I'm like, okay, Sophie, reel it in. One thing, let's focus. And the holidays are coming, so I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about like nutrition and fitness, but also the importance of a little bit of mental health, but then the importance of having a good, solid mindset around nutrition during the holidays. Because I feel like so many people struggle with staying on track, but then also having a healthy relationship with themselves and food. And then they get stressed. And like for me in the past, I know I struggled with, for me, my mindset was, okay, it's the holidays. I'm only going to get this food during the holidays. So I'm just going to go all out, but I'm going to work out as hard as I can. But then I would overeat and I would feel bad and I would regret it, but then I would do it all again the next day. So I think a lot of people struggle, maybe not necessarily the same way, but they have their own struggles during the holidays. So my first question is, have you ever struggled during the holidays, like with nutrition and your mindset around nutrition during the holidays, or I guess any like the mental battles you faced? Have you ever struggled with that?
Yeah, well, not necessarily just over the holiday period, but I had a 7-year eating disorder, and that was like pretty severe. I was hospitalized, multiple times for that. And obviously, over 7 years, you're going to go through like 7 holiday periods.
Yep.
So I definitely struggled around that time because I was already sort of struggling. But I would say that the Christmas period was definitely maybe a little bit more stressful for me just because there is so much food around and the focus is very much around food and relaxation. But I mean, for me, my family don't really, we kind of celebrate Christmas, but we don't really do like the whole Christmas dinner thing because my mum hates cooking. My dad doesn't really like cooking that much, and we just never really did it. We just never sat down and ate loads of food. My mum is very much, she's very healthy and she doesn't really overeat sort of ever. So she doesn't really like doing the whole eat loads of food at Christmas kind of thing anyway. So for me, it was never like too much of an issue around the holidays, but I was struggling in general with, my eating disorder. So I guess in a way I did struggle, but not directly because it was the holidays. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I went through the same thing when I was in high school and also a little bit of college. I wasn't necessarily diagnosed with an eating disorder, but like looking back, I was borderline, I think. I believe I was like a borderline eating disorder, but I was never diagnosed. But through the holidays, I worked out a lot and I restricted. I had like just certain foods that I would eat and I didn't allow a lot of foods. But during the holidays, I kind of went backwards. And again, I had that mindset of, well, it's only during the holidays. And this is kind of when I was coming out of my eating disorder a little bit. Well, I still had very much disordered view of like my body and food and whatnot, but I went kind of backwards and would eat a lot. And then I would gain weight. And then that just really also derailed me mentally again, until after the holidays. And then it's like dealing with gaining weight during the holidays and then looking back at or remembering how skinny I was before that. And then again, trying to like get to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely get what you mean there. It's like a cycle, like one thing leads to the other and then that leads back to the first thing, and it's like an endless cycle, isn't it? And I think the holiday period sort of like emphasizes that cycle and makes it a lot harder to get out of.
For sure. Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so I guess since your family doesn't really like do the whole, eating a lot and all of that, what has been your mindset, not necessarily even during the holidays, but I guess just in general, what's your mindset around food, nutrition, and when there is, maybe you are presented with more options, foods, but just kind of your mindset around food?
Yeah, I mean, I've been recovered for about 5 or 6 years now. So for me, it's very much like I'm a lot more relaxed and chilled around food and about, taking a day off the gym and that kind of thing. For me, it's not really, I don't really get that overwhelmed if there's a lot of food on the table, because I kind of know I'm a bit more in tune with my hunger cues, I guess. And I'm not really that kind of person to like eat loads and loads and then regret it afterwards. So I feel like I do have like a level of control, I guess, around food, like in that I know sort of when to stop. And I don't necessarily get that sort of overwhelmed when there's a lot of options, but I definitely used to. Like when I was going through my eating disorder, it would really cause me quite a lot of stress when there were loads of different options and I was like, I don't know what to eat. And then I would worry about, am I eating too much, or like what are other people eating? Are they having the same amount as me? Just that kind of thing. And there's so many different thoughts that can go through your head when you are in that situation. But a lot of them are very like irrational in a way. Like they're kind of like toxic thoughts. But I think a lot of people do actually have these thoughts, and it's kind of like worrying the way people are around food nowadays. Even people like you, where you might not necessarily have been diagnosed with an eating disorder, but you're still having like disordered eating kind of thoughts. And it can be so tough around the holidays when there is a lot of food to try and overcome these thoughts. And yeah, it's something that like so many people have to go through.
Yeah. So what would be some things that have helped you in your mind, like whether you had to talk through your thoughts? What are some things that you've done to help you when, I guess, in the past when you have felt those like the stressful feelings and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's so tough because mindset is one of those things where it sounds really easy to change, but it's really not. I think for me, speaking to the people around me and like letting them know like that I was struggling, or just telling them sort of how I was feeling around food or around, you know, the event. Say if you're at a restaurant or you're at a family's house for Christmas, you know, just telling the people around you that you are struggling a little bit, and just having them as like a support and a bit of a guidance can really help. I also found that not necessarily just around the holiday period, but if I was going out to eat somewhere, I found that like having a look at the menu and like deciding what to eat before I got there was really helpful. And I know that in a way that kind of takes away a bit of the spontaneity about going out, because you're like planning what you're going to eat. But it can really help if you are struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder, just to take away some of the anxiety that you might feel when you actually get to the restaurant. So I think those would be my two top tips: just getting the support from the people around you and trying to maybe plan out your meal a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful what you said, that first tip about just letting people know, those around you, that you are struggling. It's something that it's so simple now that you say it. I've never thought about doing that before, but it is so simple. I think we just overthink it. I think as humans, we just overthink things a lot. But if we have a loved one, just simply saying, hey, I'm struggling, and telling them what they can do to help you. And then also with looking at food before you go eat somewhere, I started doing that. And I guess more so when I was struggling more with food and like yo-yo dieting and all of that, it began to help me because I could look at the options, and I could really kind of more so tune into, okay, do I want this hamburger that sounds really good, but I know it's not going to make me feel good afterwards, or I know that mentally it's not going to be good for me? Or is there another option that has healthier, more nutrient dense, healthier option that will help me feel better afterwards too, mentally, physically, all of that. So yeah, I think those are two really big things that not even during the holidays people can do, but just in general. Going back to, I know this is kind of changing the topic a little bit, but that's okay. I want to know more about, like, was there a time when, like, because I know for me, when I started getting into the disordered eating and all of that, there's like a specific event that triggered all of it, and it kind of has stayed with me up until this point. But is there specific events that happened for you, or like what was the starting point for you, and how old were you?
Yeah, for me, I was 13 when I was first diagnosed, and I was diagnosed with anorexia, and I wouldn't say I was like fully recovered until, a few years ago. So it was quite a long time. And in terms of the trigger, this is something that I still today have no idea about. I mean, at the time, there was a bit of like a fallout in my family. So my grandparents kind of like fell out with my mum and me and my brother, and we kind of just stopped speaking after that time. But I don't remember at the time that event really affecting me. Like, I don't consciously remember being really upset about it. But then subconsciously, maybe that had some kind of effect, because that happened just before I started losing a lot of weight, and about a couple of months before I got diagnosed. So I guess like that might have played a role in it, but I really can't pinpoint like one exact trigger. There was no like big event apart from that I can really remember happening. I think maybe a lot of it could be down to like my personality, because I'm quite a perfectionist kind of person, and I like to do really well at things, and I like to push myself like to the limits and be the best. And I think that's a very common trait in people with eating disorders. And I think that probably perpetuated it a little bit. But in terms of like a trigger, like I really don't know.
Yeah. And I think some people, like a lot of people, they don't know. And it could be something that you don't even remember. Like you said, it could be like just like a subconscious thing. So then how did that affect basically everything until this point today? Like I know you said you were recovered or you maybe went into recovery, but like how has that played a role into who you are today?
Oh, I feel like my eating disorder has like completely shaped who I am today. Not necessarily in a bad way or a good way. I just think for me, because I was suffering through my whole teenage years, I think I missed out on a lot of like key socialization, because eating disorders can make you very isolated. They make you sort of not really want to go out anywhere and not want to speak to anybody. So I think in a way, I am a sociable person, but I'm also very much, I'm often quite introverted when you first meet me. And I think I'm very anxious, like in social situations. And I think a lot of that does stem from my eating disorder and just not really having those like key socialization years. So I think that's kind of shaped who I am a little bit. But I also think that on the positive side, I think it's made me a lot more kind of like, I guess I've realized that like how strong we can actually be when we are going through something really tough. And even though at the time you don't feel like you can get out of this horrible situation, you feel stuck, but then you can actually get out of that situation eventually, even if you feel like you can't. And I think my eating disorder has definitely taught me that we can be so much stronger than we first think. And that can apply to, you know, any situation that we're in, not just an eating disorder, you know, any kind of tough situation, we are all strong enough to get out of them. And sometimes you don't realize that until you've actually been through a really tough situation.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think a lot of life and challenges or anything in life, like you connect the dots after the fact, maybe years later, whatever it may be, but then you look back and you're like, I was really strong. I went through that. This is what I learned. And it's kind of like you can connect the dots as to who you are today. And then also using that, like I know for myself, I can use those past struggles to help someone else or share it on my podcast. And just knowing that there are people out there who still struggle with it. Maybe they will, or they currently are, or they did in the past. But to me, it's like we can use our past struggles as a message and our strength now to help someone else. So I think that like those challenges can be very powerful. So do you feel like that's like the biggest mental battle that you have faced is like going through that eating disorder, or has there been anything else?
No, that's definitely been the biggest. Yeah. And I think it will be forever the biggest challenge I've ever been through. It was so long and so tough. I think eating disorders I think they're seen as, like, I don't think people realize how serious they are and how much they can actually like destroy your life. Like I was so depressed. I was isolated. I honestly just hated every second of my life because every second felt like torture because, you know, when you're so starved and you're not thinking clearly, your body is aching from over exercising, you feel lethargic, you know, you're isolated. It's all of these things just combine, and it honestly just makes life feel so like tedious. And it's crazy that eating disorders can have that impact. And it's definitely, I think it's always going to be like the biggest thing I've ever had to go through for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel like you still struggle? Like do triggers come, or like you still kind of almost slip into past habits or past ways of thinking?
Not necessarily now. I think during the first couple of years of recovery, so when I was you know, putting weight on and I was eating a lot more and I was exercising less, I still thought I was kind of recovered at that time, but I was still in a bit of like a fragile state mentally. And it would be very easy for me to start over exercising again or try and restrict food a little bit, even though I wasn't necessarily in a full-blown eating disorder, I still had those little sort of slip-ups. But if you ask me now, I would definitely say I don't really have any kind of triggers. Like people can tell me about their weight loss, or they can say, oh, I've not eaten all day, or I've been exercising for hours. Like it wouldn't trigger me really. So I would say now I don't really get triggered, which is amazing to have, like, to be able to say.
I know, that is amazing, because that's something that, like, I feel like I don't really get as triggered anymore. But just up until like a couple of years ago, I feel like I really did. And sometimes I feel like I'll slip into past habits, but I can catch myself. So I feel like I'm just definitely stronger mentally in that aspect. But yeah, oh my gosh, I could go on forever now talking about this stuff. But if someone, because I know we're coming up on 30 minutes, but just a couple last questions. What would be like one or two, if someone is struggling with maybe just disordered eating or their mindset around food, what would be one or two, other than what you mentioned before, one or two tips or pieces of advice that you would give someone who's going through that?
As in just for the holiday period or general?
General.
In general, what tips would I give? I think, aside from the ones I mentioned before, I think writing things down can be really helpful. And not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like a daily journal where you write every single thought that you have down. But I think when you are struggling, particularly, say you might just be having a really bad day mentally, just grabbing like a journal or a diary and just kind of venting to the diary can really help. I used to journal a lot during my eating disorder, and I would write pages and pages and pages. And I found it so therapeutic just to get sort of the thoughts out of your head, because when you have so many negative thoughts going on in your head, going round and round, it can really have like a detrimental effect on your mental health and your physical health. So I just find like writing everything down and getting your thoughts onto paper can be really therapeutic. So that would be like my first tip. And if I could give a second tip, what would I say? I think, I actually don't know what I would give for a second tip, because usually I would always say like journaling and getting the support are like my top two. I kind of want to say like practicing self-care and self-love activities can be helpful as well. But I know like it's not always easy to just be like, oh, well, just love yourself and accept yourself for who you are. Like it's easy saying that, but it's not always easy actually putting that into practice. But I think doing self-care activities and actually taking the time to do the things that you enjoy can have a knock-on effect on your mental health. And when you feel good in yourself and you feel good about what you're doing and who you are as a person, that can make your mindset around food and exercise and your body shape a lot more positive. So I guess like practicing self-care would probably be my other tip.
I love that you say practicing, because when I talk to people like clients or anyone, I love to use the word practice, because instead of just like, yes, we're doing it, but by practicing, it changes the mindset, because it is a practice. It's not going to be perfect. You might, just not follow through sometimes, or I don't know, it really is just a practice. So I love that you said that. And what about now, if we're thinking like post-holiday season, would you give those same tips to someone, or is there anything else that you would give for a tip for like maybe we've gone through the holidays and they have these like fitness goals and they want to get back on track. Maybe they've slipped, off track, and they need to start up again. It's the new year. Would you give those same tips, or is there anything else that you would say to that person?
I think New Year is a really difficult time, because it is that time when everyone's like setting new fitness goals, and usually a weight loss goal that people have, or whatever. I think start small. Like that would be my number one tip for any kind of goal that you have, whether it's a physical goal, a mental goal, whatever it is. Just start small, because you can't expect too much of yourself too quickly, because when you do, that's when you start feeling overwhelmed and you just give up altogether. So I think starting small and just taking even just one little step every day, or making these small changes every day, I think that is like the key to success with anything.
Yes, 100% agree. I've said it so many times on this podcast. I'm so glad you said that, because I think that when we start small with anything, we're just setting ourselves up for success, as opposed to trying to change everything and then we get in our heads about it and it's too much and then we're like, screw it, I'm done. So I think starting small is a huge, very important thing in life. So I guess, okay, my last question is, so this podcast is called Flow with the Grow, and I was wondering, I like to ask people this because everyone has such a different answer, but when you hear Flow with the Grow, what comes to mind for you?
I think of like go with the flow.
Yeah.
Like a play on words with that, and just like being more relaxed and chilled and just like letting things happen, because a lot of the time we're very focused on like trying to make things a certain way and trying to control everything. But I think it kind of just reminds me that sometimes you can just like go with the flow and just let things kind of pan out the way they're supposed to.
Love that. Awesome. Okay, lastly, what if you want to just kind of plug in, like what if you have a website or your Instagram? Also, I know you said your podcast is Finding My Fit podcast. I'll link all those in the show notes. But if someone kind of wants to find you, whether it's just seeing what you post and just kind of connecting with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. My website is finding-my-fit.com, and my podcast is Finding My Fit. That's on any podcast platform, is pretty much on all of them. My Instagram is at Finding My Fit Podcast, and my TikTok is my name at Athina Crilley. So that's predominantly where I hang out online. And I'd love for anybody to get in touch with me.
Cool. Love that. Well, thanks again so much for coming on, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so fun to chat with you today.
Yay. Okay. Well, I will talk to you soon, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Flow with the Grow. I'll see you next week for your daily dose of positivity and growth.